and welcome to The Good, the Bad and the Worst, a podcast where we watch movie trilogies and series and decide which film was never able to consummate its marriage. I'm your host, Grana, and joining me today...
I'm Luke Morgan, and they took everything. All that remains is the mattress.
And I'm your best friend, Nikolaj, and I think I ran over your dog.
Boys, we're going full art house tonight. I was going to say outhouse tonight. Outhouse is a different series of movies. We're going full art house tonight. I feel like we kind of dabbled with the Before trilogy. I don't know if they're like full art house movies, but these movies, I was definitely sipping a very small coffee with my pinky sticking out by the end of these movies and smoking a cigarette as well.
Yeah, definitely. What's cheese?
The Three Colors trilogy. Three colors, blue, white, and red. How'd we go watching these movies? Luke, how did you feel? How'd you feel going into these movies? Yeah, none of us had seen them before, I believe.
No. So, see, even that surprised me. I thought this would have been like one of the first movies Conan ever watched as a child, and just been all up in,
6-year-old.
It grew up,
writing essays as a 6-year-old.
My French family.
Obviously, I had never seen these films, believe it or not, and I don't know. Obviously, I know they're highly revered and all that. I really thought my wife would love them. She loves, like, her favorite movie of all time is Emily, and like I know she likes foreign films, and this is a romance film and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna say some stuff on this podcast that if one day we become big and famous, people are going, and we're invited to the Oscars or some film junket, people are going to bring up some quotes I'm going to say from this to say why I should be uninvited to that press junket as a film critic.
Are you attacking the French or something?
No, not cancelled like that. But
okay.
I feel like in cinema, I'm going to say a lot of cinema blasphemy in this podcast. So I'll get to that later. But I didn't enjoy these films.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know, for me, I'll let you go in a minute, Conan, because I feel like you're going to probably have the most to say, but like I hadn't seen these movies, and I wasn't 100% sure coming in. Like I only got them from an Empire list of the greatest trilogies of all time, and I've never been big into art house movies, but they grew on me, I'll say that. And the thing I like, anytime I have sort of sat down with a movie like this, the thing I like about it is I don't know if I loved watching the movies, but I really enjoy looking at the discussion around these movies, thinking about these movies afterwards, and I think that's probably what art house is really good at, right? Like, I really do feel like you're supposed to sit and watch this movie and then go get a small cup of coffee and smoke a cigarette and talk about it afterwards, right? Like, I feel like that's 100%. The point of these movies. So I really enjoyed looking up reviews and what people had to say about them, and they definitely grew on me. I actually think one of these movies I really liked. We'll get to it, I suppose, but
Ooh, I'm excited.
I mean, looking at other people's reviews, they're like, if this is the one you like, you're a simpleton. So maybe I'm a simpleton. I don't know. There was a lot of snobs out there saying if you like this particular movie, you don't really like art house, and I'm okay with that too. But Conan, how did you feel? You hadn't seen these before, but I feel like these are on some list of shame for you. I'm sure you own the Criterion collection of them, do you?
Oh, I wish. Criterion's too expensive for my my red blood. I do own them on DVD, but they were ex-rentals from one of the stores that closed down. It's funny, like you mentioned that so many of the lists, or so many of the like discussions and analysis that I read about these are all like, look, these films were and are kind of cool to sit around with film students and discuss over a dinner thinking you're smart, but they're also, everyone knows that that's the pretentious thing to do. Like,
yeah, there
is an awareness that these are like the go-to art house films for people to talk about, that 20-year-old uni students are like, these are the 3 greatest movies ever made, and that's wank. But that being said, my first thing here is these are true art house films, and for exactly the points you say, Griner, like they're quiet, they're slow, they're ponderous, they're not entertaining. Like I had to actively like turn off the lights, put my phone in another room because my mind was constantly wandering. I'm like, this is bad. I've been trained to do this. I shouldn't. So I really struggled to keep my attention. And at the end of all of them, I was like, oh, yeah, okay, it was kind of underwhelming. But similar deal, the more I thought about it, the more I read about it. And I've been thinking about them, not even intentionally, but like,
yeah,
like why did that happen in this film? That film, some stuff that was so bizarre. There's so much like empty space in this movie, and I'm like, why? And I'm finding myself trying to calculate it and figure it out. And I think that's what, like I say, that's what good art house is, and that's definitely what these films are. They're not films you see on a Saturday night with your friends.
No.
I would love
Yeah.
to see these in a cinema because you would be entirely like locked in, and I think that'd be a really cool experience. But they're definitely films that I think have as much value as artifacts to study as they do entertainment. And like that's a great thing about cinema, is that it's not all just entertainment. It shouldn't be. Some of it is like a text. You've got to study it, and it's like, it might be a slog, but at the end, I think you can learn from that, grow from that. And I definitely have like intellectual and emotional questions from these films, and I'm like, that's really actually kind of deep that I might not have thought about as much if I hadn't seen these. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I thought Luke was going to come in with the zinger there, but we'll save the zingers for later. No, I feel like them being a foreign language film kind of helped them out a little bit for me, because I had to sit and read subtitles. I couldn't look away while characters were talking, because you're right, it was they're quiet movies. They're not quick to get to the point, and even like looking at a synopsis or something for these, like, you're not here for the plot twists.
No.
Right? Like, you're not here for the action that's going to happen in the next scene. You're here to listen to characters talk and ponder things and get philosophical. And it feels really pretentious, but yeah, there's something fun to thinking about that afterwards and trying to understand these movies, putting in the effort to understand what's going on in these movies rather than just consuming it like most other modern media.
So this is the thing. Like, I was naughty. Now, I had my phone. I kept getting distracted. I
That's fine.
honestly felt like I disassociated watching most of these films, where I would just I'd be bored by what was going on, and then I'd scroll on like my phone for a bit. I'd look up and be like, "Who's this character? What's going on? Okay, let me try and figure out what's going on. Okay, I don't know who that is." And like, I was honestly out of the loop, and that's probably partially to blame for why I probably didn't enjoy these films as much. But like, as entertainment goes, like, maybe I'm more MCUified, but like, I feel like in my life, maybe it's just where I'm at in life, I need to be entertained by films, and these films were not entertaining. One of the things I wanted to say, which is blasphemy, is like, I was like, man, I'd rather watch Marvel's Eternals because like, that was entertaining. At least I know how
You can
shocking.
go. You can go.
Look, I'm just going to disconnect me from the call now. But I feel like the main thing, and Grana said it, I just couldn't get away from watching it thinking, man, this is pretentious. And like, man, this feels very like I'm watching a play on screen. Like, a lot of stuff with the music choices, especially in Blue. They did some strange things, which obviously we'll get into. But like, I felt like there's so much saying, so I'm just like, I feel like I'm watching opera or a play, and I'm not about that sort of stuff. And just, I don't know, it just felt very like, oh yeah, this is the type of film Conan would love. Or like
I take
no,
offense.
no,
Or a
wait, no,
compliment. Or
you
as a
shouldn't
compliment.
take
I
it.
actually don't.
You
I
should
don't
take it
know.
as a
Yeah.
compliment. Like, I was like, this is such like an art house film. Like, I was just like, this is like, I feel like I'm supposed to be writing notes about like symbolism and all this sort of stuff, but I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. Sitting down after getting my kids to bed at night, I was like, nah, this isn't a movie I can sit and eat snacks and watch and enjoy.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
And I think it's okay to like not be in the mood for a movie like this. Like, it's kind of a punishment having to do this for a podcast. You've got a time limit. You have to have it done in this amount of time.
Yeah.
Like, I do feel like it's the kind of movie you have to want to sit and watch, right? Like, you can't throw it on in the background. It's not even the kind of movie you just feel like watching on Saturday night. It's like, okay, tonight I'm watching this movie. I'm going to sit and think about it. I'm going to concentrate on it.
And
yeah.
I will say as well, also, naughty me, I powered through 2 in one night.
That's bad.
And then
That's
the
a
third
hard
one,
thing.
and then the third one the next night, which was before this podcast. So I haven't actually read anything online about them or looked up discussions. I cruised through 2 of them last night, and then one after the other, and then the third one today. And yeah, maybe not the way to watch them.
I did two. I did two in one day, and I actually think it was an interesting experience. But we'll get to it because it.
True.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
the links between these movies is kind of fun to look for.
Yeah, I'm keen to talk about that. Like, I spaced these out pretty well. I think I did one night, 2 nights after them, like 3 nights after. But even with Red, I watched it after a long day, and I fell asleep in the middle of it, and I had to rewind, and I was like, okay, kind of got to remember where I'm at, what's been happening. And there was definitely those moments that I really want to rewatch Red because I know that I missed some stuff. But
I'll just say, out of them, I felt like I was like, oh, I feel like I've missed some stuff, and I should rewatch Red. Actually, like I the last half of Red, I feel like I paid attention to the whole thing, and I was like, oh, I probably should have. I was like, I feel like the first two movies kind of made me disassociate a bit from the start of Red, where I'm like, I should go back and pay a bit more attention to the start of Red.
I feel like that's also part of the point of the movie. The movie's meant to make you feel a bit kind of lost and confused, but to your point about the elements that are pretentious, right? Like, things like the color, the music, the symbolism, all that. It's interesting to think of these movies as like they're kind of to enjoy them. It almost is inherently pretentious, and what I mean by that is these films are like masterclasses in visual, like in cinematic storytelling, right? Like they're very visual. The audio cues, especially in Blue, have a weird dissonance that makes you stop and think and go, "What exactly does this mean?" The fades to black are like a really interesting choice, and I want to discuss them. Really weird, but that's the whole thing, right? It makes you stop and go, "What the hell? Why is this happening?" That's not how the language of cinema works. That's not how movies are supposed to communicate. So Kozlowski, I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's very Polish, but I'm going to call him Kozlowski so I don't mean offense by that. It's just going to be the only thing I can say. He clearly knows what you're expecting, how to tell a story, and he knows that by doing these choices, it's going to make you stop and think and feel something different. And so to enjoy this movie, you essentially have to be like, I know the language of cinema. And I'm really trying hard to not sound like a pompous dick. Because I don't mean that to happen. But when you know like how it's communicated, when you know how movies tell stories and the strengths and weaknesses of the medium, you look at a movie like this and go, oh, it's challenging that, it's questioning that. Why do I think that? How do I take a story from this difference? And so to enjoy it, you kind of have to be a bit more aware of how movies work. Whereas a general entertaining film, you don't need any awareness of that because it's like on the surface, films entertain. You sit and watch it, it keeps you engaged. So it is almost like an inherently pretentious, might not be the right word, but it is almost inherently pretentious to really enjoy these films because to enjoy them, you're naturally looking deeper into it. And that's not a good or a bad thing. That's just how, some people consume films that way. Like I'm really into studying the craft. So that's why I think I enjoy these. Whereas if you go to movies for entertainment, like these are not going to be your thing at all. And that's why film critics love them, because critics love the craft. Critics love the medium and like the scholarship around it. So they're naturally drawn to films like this. Whereas your average masses aren't going to look for that in a movie. So it's neither here nor there.
You get this in a lot of mediums too. Like you hear from comics, like there's certain comedians that I don't find very funny, but you hear every comedian finds this comedian the funniest guy in the world, and he's like he's a comic for comics. And you see it in books as well, like people who are really into books. This is a book for like authors, right? Like you see this sort of stuff all the time in media, and it's fun to interact with as an outsider. But I definitely at times felt like I lacked the vocabulary to talk about these movies in a lot of cases. So I'm hoping Conan can fill me in a bit there. Yeah. I went down the rabbit hole a bit with Art House and was looking around, and there's a bit of a discussion on Wikipedia about how it's changed over the years and how independent movies kind of came in, and they're these small movies that have this small audience, which is kind of the niche that Art House filled. But then the studio saw the money in it, right? And they started making these smaller studios, Fox Searchlight and A24, and they're releasing all these independent movies. Is Art House dead? Are people still making Art House movies, Conan, or is it kind of fallen by the wayside?
Yeah, like with any genre, right? Genres are kind of they're pretty fluid and they don't really mean anything. They're attempts that we use to and so all like Art House and independent are and were used pretty interchangeably, and all that meant was an independent film was a film that wasn't studio backed, but you get blockbusters that are like that. You get like big action films that feel really mainstream, but they're independent technically. And art house has kind of been used for that. Like it's been used as like kind of a catch-all for any genre that's not like your action, horror, comedy, drama, thriller.
Yeah.
It's like if it's not one of those, like, oh, I guess it's an art house film because it's like a bit too slow or
It's
silly,
trying something different. Yeah.
exactly, or it's doing something different to not be defined by that. So I don't think that genre is dead. I just think that, like, I feel like there's still films you'll see and you're like, that's an art house film, right? And I think especially in the 80s and 90s, it was very much like it was, and this kind of speaks to Western ignorance of like any foreign film was an art house film. It's like that's not the case,
Yeah.
and we sort of know that a bit more now. Like 20 years ago, Parasite, which won Best Picture, would have been like that was such an interesting art house film, and it is kind of an art house film, but that's also not. That doesn't say anything about it. Saying it's an art house film really does it a disservice to just be like, oh, it's anything else. And like, so I think people are just aware that the genre is a bit of a catch-all, like that name is a bit of a catch-all, which is fine. Like these are French films. They're art house films, but they are also, you could say they're just foreign movies. White is definitely a comedy, but it's a black comedy, and like you can give it other labels. So I don't know. I think it's just genre theory changes every year as the world becomes aware of it, and it takes on different importance.
Yeah. All right. Should we get into it? Should we get into some stats?
Yeah.
Stats.
These might be some of the most interesting stats we've had for any movie. So, Blue, 85 on Metacritic, 1.39 million box office.
Wow.
What?
Do you know what do you know what its budget? Do you know what its budget was?
No, I searched and searched to try and find the budget for these movies, and I could not find it anywhere. I imagine it's like a tin of baked beans and
50,000,
and the smell of an oily rag. Like it's not a lot of money, I'm assuming.
I think they were actually funded by they were somehow French funded, which is why they're French films, even though Kraslovsky is a Polish director.
Yep.
But anyway, continue. I didn't mean to.
So no, that's fine. White, 88 on Metacritic, 1.25 million box office. And then Red, 100 Metacritic score. I think it might be the only film that has 100 still. I don't know. There was a bit of tossing and turning about that, but there's not many. 3.6 million box office. So big leap over the other two. But I mean, we just did Black Panther last fortnight. I assume it made that before it had even come out in cinemas somehow.
Yeah. It probably made that
400
in pre-ticket sales or something like that.
Pre-sales easily, yeah.
Is it true? Like, did these movies come out in the same year?
Two of them.
I saw 94 as all
94 and 95. They all came out.
No,
or was it 93 and 94?
No, not 93. So Blue came out in 93.
True.
And then the other two in 94. So there was a time where he was editing Blue, filming White, and writing Red. So they were quick turnarounds. Like they were, you've got three films, and he's like bang, bang, bang. So
and I think on the budget they were filmed. They didn't have a lot of days of filming up their sleeve. Like there wasn't reshoots or anything like that. I imagine in a lot of cases.
No, sure. 100 though, 100 Metascore.
It's crazy.
That's a thing.
And it's also got a perfect Rotten Tomato score.
100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Luke,
I think it might be the only film that has both of those.
I don't get it, but
I think it's okay to not get it. Anyway,
yeah.
Let's kick into it. Three Colors Blue. A woman struggles to find a way to live her life after the death of her husband and child. That's it. That's the plot for this film.
All the plot synopsises for these were not what I was expecting, right? Like this film is about that, but it's also, it feels kind of different. Like it's almost an uplifting story in a lot of ways. And the plot for the other two are also very different to how I thought they'd play out. Like,
so the best, like in researching these, I looked at a lot of things, and the best thing I saw was Ebert saying that this film is an anti-tragedy.
Yes.
Like it looks like a tragedy. That synopsis is the synopsis for a tragedy film, but it's actually an anti-tragedy. It's kind of an uplifting film. And then White is an anti-comedy, and Red is an anti-romance or anti-love story.
Yeah.
Like it's real. And looking at these movies under that lens is like that's really interesting.
I noted that down as well. I was like, that is the best way to understand them. I think. Like, God bless Roger Ebert.
Smart guy.
He does. What did you guys think? I've talked too much. Luke, how did you enjoy Blue?
Man, I was tripped out at first with like with the music choices. Obviously, you alluded to it earlier. Like at the first time it happened, like, and the music goes all like dun 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 dun, and it fades to black. I was like, oh shit, what did I miss? I was like, something dramatic just happened, and I rewinded it back, and it's just like, do you want me to like tell you anything? And she's just like, no, and then it just dun dun, dun
That's
and
it.
goes back, and then fades back in like 5 seconds later to the exact same scene, same conversation. I was like, okay, well, what's going on? I was like, that was trippy, and I wrote that down, and then it kept happening, and I was like, man, this is. It's like, it reminded me of like, I don't know, an old RPG where you've made a character choice in a video game and it plays that cutscene that you've selected the choice. So it fades out, it comes back because she's made a moral choice and she's deciding to go this way. So it's,
Yeah.
but it reminded me of like curtains, like, I don't know, that's what sort of reminded me of like a play or something where it was like, and scene for this. And then like now this opens up and it's the continuation or something like that. But interesting because it took me back and made me pay attention, for a bit.
Yeah.
Where I was like, okay, what's going on? What's happened here? So what's up? What's up with that?
Well, that's exactly the language is meant. Like you're meant to think. A fade to black is used as an end of a scene, right? It
Yeah.
fades out when a scene is
Yeah.
over, and so you're like, oh, the scene's done, but it's not. Now, my understanding, my interpretation of it was like this whole film's dealing with grief, and that's kind of like that's playing into the idea of grief, right? Where there's like a fallacy to the idea of it of closure, and like you never really have closure with grief. You never truly recover. It always lives with you. And so she's trying so hard in this movie to strip it away, to literally, to throw away her entire life and start afresh as nothing with no possessions, completely anonymous. But in her attempts to do that, like there's this fake sense of closure. Maybe she'll get it. Maybe we have a fade to black. Maybe the scene ends, but it doesn't. It comes back to the exact same moment because you can't escape it. You can't get closure. And the music's a similar thing. Like it hits in these pieces. You never hear the full piece that she's composing. You never understand how it functions in the broader symphony. You just get bits of it, and so you get a bad memory, a hurtful emotion, a moment of sadness, and it's like that's it. So it's buried, but you can't actually hide from it. And so there's always music, and there's always the hope of closure, but it never delivers.
Yeah, that's good. That makes me reevaluate this movie.
You feel better about it now, right?
Maybe I should do some research.
Thinking about it more, right? Yeah,
that's an interesting choice.
Like this movie, I definitely struggled the most out of the three. I don't know if it was because I was just easing into the art housedness, or it's just I don't know. It's the one that introduces the most new vocabulary that I don't understand. I'm not sure, but yeah, the overall plot though was very it was interesting, as you say, like anti-tragedy, to see her turn around and have an impact on all these people's lives, like a positive impact. And then at the end, that's when she finally cries. That's when she's finally dealing with the grief. It's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, it's like all these films kind of deal with the chaos of connection, and like the accidental relationships and the like the randomness of life that you try to avoid or try to control for, but can't. And see, it's interesting in this, like she's trying so hard to be completely alone, and you can't help but, and in pursuing that, like she's trying to leave the woman who they're trying to kick out of the building. She's trying to leave her alone, and inadvertently becomes really connected to her.
Yeah. The
it's like that's interesting.
Just all over her then, yeah.
Yeah, just best friends or something. And so it's like it's kind of an interesting choice. Sorry. But I think as well, like dealing with those moments of just like this film is a hard slog, but again, it's meant to be. You're meant to be dealing with like the weight of it, and like there's these long sort of scenes of her swimming, and you're like, we're kind of tired of that. It's like this is a bit of a struggle, but she's tired of grieving and she's struggling to sort of live. And I think it does a good job for the most part of putting you in her headspace of like this sort of monotonous existence.
Yeah.
Trying to do one thing, trying to understand, but then always being, I mean, never fully getting there. Like it captures something about grief that, that works, that is better than if you had just had a sort of crying or having long heartfelt conversations with people. Like it's so hard moving on, and like you never move on. Like that'd be really inauthentic, but there's almost no discussion of it except with her mum who has dementia. Like that's really interesting. There's like it's like the elephant in the room.
Yeah, even like the car accident at the start there's no fanfare, there's no there's almost nothing to it. It just kind of happens. and we've almost immediately fade to black, and like we just move on and we see the aftermath. Like if this was a tragedy, like that'd be this long drawn out scene, and you'd see the the tears and the heartache, but you don't get any of that. Like you basically cut to her trying to commit suicide in hospital.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really underwhelming.
And
it's jarring, yeah.
I'll just say that doctor is like the worst bedside manner ever. he like wakes her up from his coma. He's just like, do you know about the? He never finishes it. I was just like, tell her, and then he's like, oh yeah, your husband's dead, and she's like, oh, my daughter, and he's like, oh, you heard her.
Like,
I forgot about her.
I knew there was another one.
Even though, like, I feel like I don't know. It's with the whole grief thing. I feel like it goes into the whole thing about the husband, his music, all this sort of stuff. I don't really ever feel like the daughter's brought up again, or
No,
too much.
Yeah, she's not really. You're right.
Which is a bit weird. But yeah, this one is the one I feel like I struggled with the most as well. Just I felt myself tuning out. There's a scene where the house is empty. Like I said, only the mattress is left. That dude comes in, and I was like, who's this dude? Like, I don't know who this guy is. Is he a fan? Is he like a stalker of her? I don't know why he's like following her around. He had photos in the car. I didn't know who he was. I don't know if I'd missed something where it was like, this is this guy who knew your husband or anything. I was just like, I don't know what's going on and who this guy is who's just following her around. Bought the mattress.
There's a lot of that, like someone's involved and you're like, I'm not fully sure who this character is, and you sort of eventually realize, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like there is no introduction to like, this is your husband's partner. It's just like they're having sort of a romantic affair. It's okay, so but why? And then he knows his music. So yeah, you kind of have to piece it together, which I kind of like that. I like that mode of storytelling. But
yeah, and they like reveal the husband's affair like right at the start. Like there's the pictures of him with the other woman. Like he's got them on him, and she even says later, like, if I'd gotten those off you at the start. But they don't talk about it again for ages. Like it's not a major plot point until way later. It's interesting. Like I appreciate how he's like, you can figure this out. Like you can look at these photos and understand what's going on. I don't need to spell it out to you. It's not that important who this guy is yet, so you don't really need to know. He's just there, which is like a real life situation too. Like if she's seeing him again, she's not going to introduce him. They're not going to introduce themselves to each other because they know each other. They'd only be doing that for us. And I guess he trusts us to understand that language well enough. And he's like, here's all this other weird language instead. Yeah, it's jarring, but it's cool.
Yeah, I think. No, you're exactly right. It's trying to fully immerse you in her position, and it would be weird for her to be reintroduced to all of them in a clunky way. And it helps to alienate us as the audience as well, like to further make us feel kind of lost in this situation, like she is.
Yeah, she's isolating herself. So, like, if she was often in movies, the way they do it is they add here's my new friend. Let me introduce you to each other. Yeah, and they're the audience surrogate. But that doesn't make any sense when she's trying to isolate herself.
Christopher Nolan was directing this. We would have known who he was. I'm just saying that we would have had an explanation of his job,
and he would have had the worst name ever.
This guy, his name is Muzak. Why was she not at the funeral? I get like there's the whole thing. She's isolating. She was in hospital and neck brace. Feels weird to not go to your daughter and your husband's funeral and just
wasn't
to watch
she just
it on
too
a tiny
sick?
little
She was just
TV
too
screen.
unwell.
Yeah, that's what I thought. She was.
I don't know.
Couldn't be. Because that happens after the suicide attempt. So I don't know if there's like a suicide watch or something. Which, this is the 90s. This is the 90s.
Maybe.
I'm not sure if that still happened, but
maybe. But then again, you wouldn't. It seemed like the nurse had like an understanding of like it's like I don't know. I wouldn't think the nurse would then go rat her out, if you know what I mean. Like I don't know. It was like
true.
The
True.
nurse was like, oh, okay, it's all right. We'll fix the window. Go back to your room. You stop yourself. But I don't know.
Well, I feel like that's a really intentional choice as well, though, because like grief is the kind of thing that you don't know how you handle it until you're in it.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's very easy to say, I'd be strong for my family. I'd seek help because I know that's the right thing to do. But in those, those heightened emotions, you never really know what you do until it happens. And so I think that's part of the point is that her reaction to this thing is to completely detach and go, well, I can't be hurt if I have nothing. And so and we know that's a really unhealthy way to do it, but that's her reaction. And so it kind of seems natural in that vein is like, well, you she doesn't let herself grieve. So she barely watches the funeral. She does it just enough so she knows it's happened, but she doesn't actually participate because she doesn't want to be like that. Like I can sort of, again, I'm like, I can say I would never do that, but at the same time, I'm like, I can totally see a world where I am so.
It makes it real. So she's just like, no.
Yeah,
not dealing with that grief. Yeah.
Exactly right.
The start of this, my wife watched the start of this movie with me, but we were like, what would you do if like me and our daughter died? Like, how would you react? And that almost added to the tragedy that like she couldn't get to the funeral. She's stuck there in bed. Like, yeah, it's, I don't know. It made you think about it a lot more, which is cool.
That's the thing. Like all of the choices, all the stuff you see in this and in all the films are things you sort of don't expect or anticipate. Like you expect there to be a funeral and it be an emotional event where people offer condolences and she's really struggling to deal with it.
Yeah.
But there shows all the little bits between that. It shows her smashing a window to try to kill herself, but nothing comes of it. It shows a really weird view. It shows her just like hanging out in empty buildings. It shows her swimming over. It shows her ordering like her affogato. And you're like, these are kind of this is almost like the scenes in between the scenes you should be seeing, like the conversations with people, the struggles, the heightened moments. But that's also the real life stuff. What actually makes life up is all the little moments that are boring and unexciting between the drama. And so it's really fascinating just to see that, I guess, on screen. Of like, this is a kind of I think they call it like kitchen sink film, but it's not quite a kitchen sink film. But these movies are just like, this is showing her life in all its mundanity or mundanity. I don't know what the word is there. I should know that. But her boring parts of her life, dealing with it rather than what you expect. Like I say, it's like an anti-tragedy. It's like you don't show the tragic moments, you show the boring sort of the nitty-gritty, and that's cool.
Yeah, there's that little scene of her dipping the sugar cube in her coffee, and like it's so unnecessary. Like it adds nothing to the plot, but it's such a, I don't know, it's a really cute. I don't know. There's something about it that just makes it really stand out, and it's just a very quiet scene that doesn't need to be there, but it's included.
Yeah, and you can sort of read into that, and you can take something from it, right? Even if you don't fully know what it is, it's like just the visual of this immersion and consumption is really cool. Do you so these three films, right? Like Kozlowski said, they're based off the French motto: liberty, equality, fraternity. I want to discuss all of these. It's like, what do you guys think about the idea of liberty? Like, how do you interpret? Do you see that at all in these? Do you think there's liberty in this? Like, how do you read into that?
See, I already read like all the I read into it too much, and it's like it's the idea of emotional liberty, right? Like freeing yourself from those emotions and letting go of the tragedy. Or at least that's really what she's trying to do. Yeah. Somebody else had that deep insight.
You should write that down, Grant.
I should.
And Luke.
See, like that's the thing. I was surprised because I think halfway through the first one, I wanted to sort of look up what is like the symbolism of blue, white, red sort of thing, and I wasn't expecting those. I was sort of expecting depression, rage, whiteness, I don't know, like innocence or something, I don't know, like purity or like something. I wasn't sure, but like I get, I don't know. I'm not much of a film school person, so I can sort of see the liberty of, I don't know.
No, that's for like I did like growing. I read a lot about them. I'm like, how exactly do these get explored? And the one that I saw that makes the most sense is like it's her finding liberty from her past life and what that looks like. And to start with, it's her looking to literally get rid of it all.
Yeah.
But then it ends up being a sort of an acceptance, and from that she becomes liberated from the grief in a way. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. That fits.
The funniest thing about the symbolism to me is that the director said, I did that because the money came from France.
Yes.
If the money had been a different nationality, we would have titled the films differently, or they might have had a different cultural connotation, but the films probably would have been the same. And it's almost like, are we just reading into this stuff and he was just making the films he wanted to make? Like, there's always that element, are we taking this further than the author ever intended? And I think that's interesting, especially when authors come out like this and it's like, you don't have to read into everything. But that's also part of the fun, right? Like,
and that's the beauty and nature of art. Like art as a creative thing it's always defined by interpretation. Like you can't really have art with an intention and a meaning. Like the author can do that and say, here's what I sort of want from it, what I'm trying to say. But it only has power from what someone else takes from it. And so there is something really funny about that. Like, and it speaks to him as a filmmaker that he's he could make this film in any of these things, and you can read into it. And like, yeah, that's even without understanding it, I think that says a lot about the quality that you can read so much into it, whether or not it was intended. Like that's good communication.
Like, to steer the direction into something I know how to talk about, like Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. He's always like, it's this strange thing where you watch those films and like, he was in the World War, and you think this whole thing of like, oh, obviously this is that stuff with the tree, like Isengard and the Ents. It's like industrialization and destroying nature. And he's like, no. It has nothing to do with my experience in the war, watching my friends die, or industrialization or nature. But it's like, yeah, it does. Like, I don't know if you intended it or not, but there's no way to see that without.
The flip side of that is like, do you think your life and experiences had no impact on the novels you wrote?
On your creativity or what you thought? Yeah, it's funny, but it's there, and that's the thing. Like, either intentional or not, it's easy to see those influences come through.
Yeah, like writing a story about grief kind of inherently has something to say about liberty, about being trapped by it and trying to get over it.
Yeah.
So you can draw those lines pretty easily. And so it's like, if it was intentional or not, I don't know, but.
And I guess like liberty, it's like she's free from the fear of losing everything because she already has. That's some deep insight from my wife.
That's some film school.
From my wife. That's my wife's film school knowledge there. Not me. I'm like, blue is depression.
You're like, that blue's only sad.
Before we move on, we need to talk about the little old lady depositing her wine bottle into the I assume it's a recycling thing. Yeah, we get this recurring scene. I mean, I just found it weird the first time I saw it. I'm like, why? This is another quiet scene. Her watching this old lady. She has a blackout in the middle of it.
Yep.
I'm not sure what we're supposed to take from this one. Like, I appreciated seeing this scene 3 times and it having a very different context every time. But this one, I was the most like, that just happened. Like, she's just an observer watching it from the outside. She doesn't interact. There's no comedy to it or anything like that.
We see the great Greek philosopher Hippocrates wrote about recycling as a word. But no, that's all bullshit. I think, it's just kind of one of those quiet scenes again. You can be like, it's a struggle. This woman's struggling to recycle. And it's like something so basic can be really hard, but also something maybe recycling is a very noble cause. And maybe at the end, like you're actually trying to save the world. So it's a struggle to save the world. She's detached from this world. Like, there really is no, it's something interesting. Like, it's such a simple thing of life that you would see.
Yeah.
Like that can have connotation. And just they put that in like,
I want to see that woman's trilogy.
I mean, this really is a trilogy,
want to recycle.
Right?
Yeah, she's the connective tissue.
Pretty much.
Also, I was the Leo meme pointing at the screen when Julie Delpy was at the the courthouse. Yeah, like, oh, that's her. She's in the next movie.
Oh, sorry, no, Juliette Binoche.
So Julie Delpy, the first one he noticed. Or
is Julie? See, I didn't see her in the first one. Is she in the
she's in the first one. Well? Yeah, she's in the courthouse. Because there's the scene where she goes inside, but just before that, you can see her sitting outside talking to her lawyer.
Well, there you go.
I must have looked away for that. Dan,
you got to be watching.
She's
literally just in the background, but
I screwed
I'm just
up.
like, that's her.
Because I knew that connection. Yeah, I was looking for it. I never saw it. Damn.
It would have been great if like the person she ended up hooking up with was Ethan Hawke. I would have been like, yes, here we go. It's all coming around.
Finally, our first.
All right.
Sextology.
Well, speaking of Julie Delpy, should we move on to White?
Do it.
Yes.
3 Colors White. After his wife divorces him, a Polish immigrant plots to get even with her. Now, I've got to say, I watched this one immediately after Blue, and it was whiplash coming into a fairly comical court scene about how he couldn't get it up for his wife to consummate the marriage. There's something very, very funny about that, particularly coming straight out of Blue to me.
Yeah. Like, I want to know, it must have been a thing, but isn't that crazy in court cases? Like, you want to get divorced? I was like, oh, my husband couldn't perform. So, all right, well, you guys can separate. That's nuts.
Well, the thing that surprised me is, like, is she just surprising him with this divorce? Like, I don't know. You've got to come to court tomorrow. I'm not telling you why. Just like, what the hell?
My
French
first note
just-
was like, this is a court case to determine if they banged or not.
Yes.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
strange.
Crazy.
But-
It's just it's so like serious with the judge and everything.
Yeah.
And Carol, which is a great name.
It's a great name.
It's just like, what's happening? I don't know what to do. And again, he's this Polish guy who barely speaks French. I don't even know if he speaks any French. And it's like,
Yeah, having to have the translator was just like rubbing
Yeah.
salt in the wound. Yeah.
I was like, when they repeat the same things, like, could you satisfy? It's like, that's very funny. This movie is actually a lot of fun, even though it's not a fun film. I enjoy.
I really like this movie. This is the movie of this trilogy I will watch again, probably. I don't know.
And you're right, it's the one that most people say is the worst. Like everything I read
Yes.
was like, what is the worst? And I'm like, I don't know if that's fair.
Everything I read was like, if what's the one you get, you're not a true art house connoisseur or
See,
some shit. Like
and that's-
everybody was down on it. Like it's the simplest one. I'm like, I don't care. I'm allowed to enjoy what I enjoy.
Yeah, and that's a real douchey attitude. Like, so,
It is.
Yeah. Luke, what do you think?
It was surprising because, like I said, I watched this right after Blue, and I feel like I was maybe a bit too harsh on this because of Blue, where I sort of was like, all right, here we go, another boring art house film. And then even like the start of it, where I was like, okay, I was like, this surely isn't meant to be like a comedy. And I was like, but I can't take this seriously when this is what, like, this court case is over. And I'm like, man, this woman's cold, man. She's just lighting this fire. She's not a nice woman at all. But like, again, this is a film I might like to go back and watch and sort of pay more attention to what was going on, because I felt like all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, he's a mob boss? What's going on? Like, wait, how did he? I was like, have I missed something big? But I didn't feel like I did. I was just like, how has he shot up in the world so quickly? Like, I was like, he bought a bit of land and now he like is like the president of the country or something. Everyone respects him. He's like got a suit and he's got his hair slicked back and everyone's like, I was like, what's going on here? So it was tripped me out, eh?
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the last half of the movie when I realized sort of what was going on with this revenge twist sort of thing. But yeah, like I definitely enjoyed this one more than Blue. I do want to go back and probably give this more attention than I did the first time. But yeah, it's an interesting contrast to the first film, definitely.
Yeah, and it's such a non-revenge film, right? Like I was expecting this big plot of like ruining her life, or like trying to catfish her or something. But it's like, and he does do that, but it's also like Julie Delpy's in like 15 minutes of this movie, right?
Yeah.
She's in the opening and the end, and the whole film is really more about him just regaining his confidence so he can get it up, and that's kind of his revenge is just like, I can be the best. And it's just, his best is literally like making this deal so he can sell land to IKEA. Like that's so stupid. But it's just, he becomes like this slumlord almost.
And the ending is really kind of like, it is kind of tragic, right? Like it's like, well, now she wants him, but he's in prison. We just had this big talk from his brother about how, oh man, I'm glad you didn't get seen because I'd be in jail because I confirmed that it was your body and all this stuff. It's like he's clearly gone through this plan he can't go back on, but you get the sense he might be having second thoughts.
They're back to where they began.
Yeah,
not been able to bang.
But it's also kind of happy because she wants him, and I think like his tears kind of are tears of joy. Like he's sad, but I feel like for me, I interpret it as there's something happy there as well, because he's like, finally she wants me. Even though she's in prison and they can't be together.
Yeah.
I interpret it as like, oh shit, I still like her, and now I can't get none of that because she's locked up, and I've kind of now isolated myself again from love or whatever or lust. But how did he fit in that suitcase? Because there was some shots of that suitcase where I was like, no one can fit in that. And then all of it, like when he comes out at the end, it's like a bigger suitcase. But that suitcase going down the conveyor thing, I was like, there's nobody fitting in that, especially not him. He doesn't look like an agile person, but
he's also
Carol. Don't underestimate him.
Yeah, he's like one of the world's best hairdressers. Right? So who knows what else? Who knows what else he's good
He
at?
just never told you about it.
That's how he got into France in the first place, man.
no, true.
But again, like it's absurd. It's like there's so many absurd things like that. You know, the Russians steal him, and
Yes.
although it's like they must be Poles, maybe I don't know, but they steal him and they're like, they just kick him down and he's really happy. Like, there's so much dumb stuff that happens in this, but it's like kind of played seriously, and like that's why it's like it's comedy, but it's also so like this is just kind of weird and sad and
Yeah. It's some good black comedy here, I think. Like, him sitting there playing the comb harmonica might be the most pathetic thing I've ever seen. And I loved every second of it. It was so good.
Yeah. I didn't think that was a real thing from The Simpsons, but I'm like, holy crap, it is an instrument.
Yeah.
That was my Leo pointing at the screen moment.
Yeah.
And Mikolaj is like their bromance.
Yeah.
It's one for the ages.
That's the real romance, right? Yeah.
It is. And it has that poignant end where like he's because it's got the whole subplot of like this man wants me to kill him.
Yep.
And it's like, I didn't see this twist coming. It was Mikolaj who wants to die.
Yeah, I was tripping me out. Then I was like, what's going on?
I was like, that was a real kind of bombshell, and then he fakes it, and it's like, do you still want to go through with this? And he makes him reconsider it. And that's it
scared the shit out of me.
Yeah. And like that's a really kind of beautiful moment, right? Where it's like, no matter how bad things get, there's actually the hope that it gets better is stronger than
His finality.
Yeah, it's like that's always gonna outweigh it. So that's I don't know. Like their romance I really liked. They see each other again later at the end and it's just this quiet, like, I'm glad you're okay. Just like I don't know. But you're right, that's the romance here. Just those two guys just hanging out.
Poor Carol. It was really depressing, like him using basically the last of his money to hear his wife getting banged. And
that scene is brutal.
It's so brutal. Like she's such a bitch. And then like him, I felt so bad for him, like demanding that little bit of money that the phone accepted, and the guy behind the counter is just like, whatever, man. And he's just like he's like, this is everything right now.
Yeah.
That little, like the 2 pence or whatever it was, he's like, I need that back.
That's all. Yeah.
The guy's just like, okay, shit, you are not doing well. Here you go. Here's your money.
It's like, what a douche working behind the counter. He's like, they stole my money. It's like, so what? Like, it doesn't matter how much it is. Give the guy his money back, you dirtbag.
Yeah.
But yeah, brutal. Poor Carol.
We get the oldie recycling again. But I don't know, for some reason that scene was hilarious to me this time. Like, there was just something so different about the tone to me that it was nearly played as comedy with him watching her. I don't know how he does it. This same scene is so much funnier.
This is what I'm saying. Kraslovsky's he knows how to visually tell stories, man. He can make you laugh just as he can make you cry. Like, I can't. What happens in this one exactly? Does Carol just watch it, or does he do anything else? I can't remember.
He just watches it. I can't remember exactly.
Oh, yeah, but he kind of like chuckles at it, doesn't he? He's almost like,
he's almost he's like laughing at her.
Yeah.
He's like, that's weird. I don't know. It's not,
And I guess what you get, so in this one, Juliette Binoche walks into the courtroom briefly, and just like gets sent back out.
Yeah,
and that, I have a reading of this film that I can give. It's a bit of a mini essay if you guys want to hear it. You don't feel you have to.
And then we'll talk about kissing the porcelain bust. But anyway, go.
All right, actually, I need to come back to that. So there's like these films all have kind of political agendas, right? Like the first one's dealing with the whole unification of Europe. That's what the symphony they're writing about. And so this one's got this really interesting look at like the capitalist communist dichotomy. So France is obviously a capitalist country. Poland's very heavily reformed by communism. It was only after 89 they became a democracy, so like 5 years ago. And so they mention that in this where he's got the sign. His brother's like, this is Europe now. This is why I have this neon sign. So like it's still a country in the shadow of communism. And so his journey to revenge is to become a massive capitalist, right? Is to become this like money lord.
Yeah.
But then in pursuing his revenge, he and Julie Delpy, I can't remember her character's name, they kind of become like these communists where they're like trying to pursue complete equality and they're losing everything about themselves in this pursuit of like, I'm as good as her, she's as good as me, we're equals. And so it's this weird like, I guess, look of like pursuing capitalism and the absurdity of that, and then sort of being undone by the communism, like achieving communism as well. So it's like this critique of kind of both European powers, like their political ideologies, And it's just this really interesting, like this clash, and this both sides are trying to become the other at the time, like 93, 94, when Europe's kind of going through this identity crisis as well, of like parts of it are coming out of the communist shadow, parts of it aren't really sure what the future looks like. And so it's like a really interesting commentary on that, I think, of just the mess that is of like European politics at the time. Now, the bust. Let's talk about making out with busts.
I mean, to me, it just added to how pathetic he is. Like, I don't know, there's something really funny about him stowing that away in the suitcase with him, that tiny little suitcase, and then making out with it. Why not?
I guess that and the Franks become like his most treasured possessions.
Yeah.
It's just so sad.
He didn't have room for his diplomas. He couldn't, fold
That's
the
right,
paper
yeah.
flat and lie next to it.
Yeah, not his
Stood up
best
no
choice.
space. He threw them out. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I've owned a Boba Fett bus before. I get it.
I have feelings on cold nights.
There's lots of really good little moments too, like where he first gets the gun and he's like looking down the barrel.
Yeah,
like, you're not a smart man.
I laughed out loud at that. Like,
yeah.
I don't laugh out loud at many things, but as soon as it cut to that scene, I laughed out like, oh,
yeah, or like when the the Polish people or whatever steal the suitcase and kick him out, and then he's looking out over a rubbish dump and he's just like, home at last. And it's
really
like that's good. It's really well done.
Yeah.
And then at the end, Julie Delpy needs a translator in the court. Like when the police come for her. Like it's a good turning of the tables compared to the start.
Yeah, true. I didn't. The first time, like when I watched it, I didn't get the impression that was her behind prison bars. It looked too. I thought it was like her home still, but she's in prison. That looked like a pretty good prison. I'll be honest. Like, just overlooking the street, and it looked like, I don't know. Backdrop wasn't like, hard bloody steel or anything like that. It was just like, I don't know. Warm lighting.
I think it's literally warm. I think it's meant to be like sort of. Oh yeah, it's almost like a metaphor.
Trick to be like, is she like? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
it's meant like, I think it's meant to make you wonder, but I think it's also meant to be like, because what she says in sign language is like, "I will wait for you. I still love you," or something. Like and so I think it's meant to be like she's home essentially. She's not in prison, even though she is in prison. It's like she's kind of such a sociopath, or so sort of messed up that she's okay, and she's home because she's found like Carol has, she's happy now. And so it's this weird, like, even though because it doesn't look like a prison at all. It's a very artistically done shot, and I feel like it's meant to do that. It's meant to be like she's not in a bad place. She's happy where she is because she reached a point.
It calls back to him looking up at her in the bedroom window earlier in the film as well. It's like a similar sort of shot.
Yeah.
Because there's this thing, like obviously when the police come in and like they're accusing her of murdering Carol, where she sort of realizes what's happened and what's going on, and sort of says like, "Oh no, we buried him." Like she sort of goes with the story of like, "No, he's dead. Like we buried him. That's who we buried," sort of thing. But yeah, I don't know if that's her being like, "Well played, you fooled me." I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's one weird thing, which I think is just a continuity thing. There seemed to be one scene where he hopped in the back of the taxi and he'd like shaved his head. He had like a buzzed haircut. Go back and watch it. And then the next scene, once they get to the place, he's got slick back hair again. So I don't know if it was a reshoot or something, but he's got like buzzed hair. I was like, oh, he's cut his hair off. And then the next scene.
I'm sure it was on purpose. He would never do anything by accident.
No, yeah, like from all the story,
I don't get the symbolism.
From all the stories, he's like a very meticulous filmmaker, and you can kind of see it. Like every shot is very carefully sort of like set out and established. So yeah, he would never do such a thing.
Well, you better explain it to me then. I'll better find out.
Luke, I think your eyes are broken.
I'll go back and rewatch it. I'll get screenshots. I'll send them to you because
please do.
Maybe I was wrong.
He's made you think that he's messing with you even after the movie.
There we go. It stuck with me.
Yeah,
I'm like, what was up with his hair? And maybe it's just because he was a barber all along.
It's all the hair. What about equality? So this film's about equality.
Yeah.
Do you guys see that reading at all?
I think it's pretty obvious in this one, right? Like,
Oh, yeah, explain it to me then.
Well.
More
I mean,
about
I
him
put myself
getting
in the hot
equal
seat.
as
Well,
opposed to
there is
equality.
that, right? Like that is equality. Him bringing himself up to where she is. But there's also, the history of men not being equal, history of men and women not being equal, and so this is you can read into it that way. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's my reading of it anyway.
It's fairly straightforward, Conan. We should
Yeah,
have
Am I the I'm sorry, I'm not. Where is the communist reading, you ignoramuses?
Sorry, and that was the
Bring
other
the
thing I was going to say, the communist reading that you brought up earlier.
Honestly,
You even mentioned equality when you were talking about that.
Get some art house.
All right, time for red.
Yep.
Red.
A model discovers a retired judge is keen on invading people's privacy.
Just change your background to red.
He did it for white
blue
too.
and white before.
I missed it. Oh. Just like the films. Just like the films.
Well,
I missed one thing in my whole
symbolism
reading.
in my background.
This is through the looking glass.
100 on Metacritic, 100 on Rotten Tomatoes. Does this movie deserve those scores?
Yeah,
No.
Luke, is Rotten Tomatoes as perfect as you always say?
It does not deserve 100, but I will say I think this is the best of the trilogy.
What would you give it then? Like a 97?
Like probably a 52.
Holy mother of Moses.
No, here's the thing. What I find entertaining and what is a great film are completely two different things. If I was to base these films off entertainment, I'll give them a 50. This is one I feel like I owe it to go back and pay better attention to, because I started once it clicked, I enjoyed the ride a lot more, and I was like, okay, I should go back. But and I don't know if this was me not paying attention or if it was done as a confusing thing where I was like, wait a minute. I was like, is he that guy? I was like, is that him when he was younger? I was like, what? But I swear, is this just like a weird camera trickery? They're not actually in the same location when they're here. Is it just like it's a symbolism thing of like, oh, he was here this many years ago? I was like, what's going on here? And then it's just this guy basically is the younger version of him now, going through the same sort of story that he went through in his, yeah.
I had the exact same thought. There was a moment I was like, are we seeing like their two memories transposed? Are we seeing her and him viewing 20 years ago and it's showing the connection?
Yeah.
I'd say like this one more than any of the others really leans into that, like the disorientation of like
what's going on
of people and their relationships and who exactly is doing what. Like
who's on the phone to her? I was like, which guy is he? I was like, I keep saying these people. Is that this guy?
Yeah.
Is that? Yeah.
Yeah, because again, there's no introduction of any of the characters. It's like here's this dude who we find out's name's Augustus or Augustus. Or August, yeah, I don't know how they pronounce it. But it's like you don't know who he is fully. It's like, you're like, is someone else? Is this her lover? Is this her brother who she keeps mentioning? Like, I do not know. And it's not right until sort of the end. Yeah, it starts to, all the layers start to converge, and you're like, oh.
Legit, like, at the start of the film, when she's on the phone to this guy, who's obviously like an abusive douchebag or like lying to her.
Yeah, what a jerk.
And like, she gets off the phone or whatever. I thought that was the guy, August. Like, then it shows him, and I was like, oh, he's not in England. I was like, he's just there. He's like, he's pretending he's away on some trip, and he's actually fooling around with this chick. I was so confused, man. It was like Inception. I was like, I don't know what's going on. There's all these different time travel things and different timelines, but it wasn't.
Back in time.
It's just, obviously symbolic things of, cycles repeating and all this sort of stuff.
But maybe it's not. Maybe you're just not reading into it enough. Yeah, it's interesting.
But I enjoyed it, yeah.
Yeah. This movie more than any, like this movie, you mentioned it before, Conan, about like him exploring the chaos of connections between people and the randomness, the random encounters that can like shape your life. And this movie, more than any of the others, really exemplifies that. Like that's what is at the core of this movie. But it's an interesting idea he goes with. It's an interesting concept to have those two lives mirroring each other.
Side
by side, like.
Yeah, and the what's his name? The guy who lives near her, he never interacts with her at all, does he? Like they never. No. We just kind of voyeuristically watch him without ever feeling like he's a character, I guess, in some ways.
Yeah, exactly. And there is that weird sense of like the judge or like Joseph. So like we are also like we're voyeurs. He's a voyeur. Yeah. We're voyeurs. as movie watchers, we're voyeurs. Like we
Yeah.
view these lives and we sort of form these parasocial relationships, just like he is. And he's kind of and then there's a character there that we don't really interact with at all. We only see, and then there's the boyfriend who we never see but only hear.
Yeah.
And so you've kind of got like different levels of all the different relationships that you can have. Well, then there's like the brother who'll get. I think she talks to the brother once or something on the phone.
Yeah, briefly
like,
when he's at her mum's house for some reason. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like you just get these tiny snapshots, and then it's so jarring in a way, but also like these are the kind of the relationships that become like you see your neighbors every day, and you start to like create stories or feel like you understand them a bit because you learn their routine.
Yeah.
And that becomes really interesting of how that becomes like a source of comfort because like as soon as you don't see them, like what's happened? Is something wrong? Are they okay? Is there been a tragedy in their lives? And you start to, like, because she's such an interesting character in this. Like she's a model. She's clearly got like a boyfriend she's obsessed with.
Yeah.
But like
and he's
she's
a
kind of got
douchebag.
Absolute scumbag. But like she's kind of got a flirty sort of relationship, but not like in a sleazy way, but like just a connection with her photographer because they hang out, they go bowling that night. But then she's clearly kind of like lonely as well. It's like she should have everything going for her because she's literally like plastered on walls nearby.
Yeah.
But she's also really kind of got nothing. And she finds this really strange connection with this disgruntled, with this kind of like asshole old man. But they're both just really like two really broken people, and they come together and they're like, this is like a love story, but like they've missed each other in the timelines, and that's really tragic as well.
There's times it feels like, is this going to be a romantic relationship? Like, are these guys going to kiss? Is something going to happen? And it never happens, and that's right. Like they're a missed connection essentially. That's connecting too late. But it's fascinating, and she is a really fascinating character to watch. Like just all the she's got a lot going on in her life, obviously, which is fun. But just all these connections she makes with people is fun to watch.
And that's the thing. Obviously, I feel like it's sort of alluded to at the end, like August, the retired judge is sort of going to maybe live vicariously through the August, who's now like they're connected on the boat at the end, sort of thing. Like they obviously meet that way. Maybe it's that love story forming in another way because the judge missed his shot by being 20 years older or whatever. But just quickly, not to go back in time, but like to go back to Blue for a second, because there's something I wanted to mention about Red, and it reminded me of Blue, and I didn't bring it up. I do like the ending shot that's like mimics the the billboard of like the red in the background with her, but with like a real sort of expression, like a real sadness or whatever, instead of the fake one for the photo. But with the ending of Blue, what did you guys think of? Like, there's a weird montage. I thought it was a weird ending with Blue. I just wanted to quickly share that out. There's like a weird montage where it just shows a bunch of stuff through like weird lenses and stuff like that.
Can you remind me?
She's getting nailed up against a piece of glass for some reason. That's the first weird thing about it.
There we go. I forgot about that.
Her face is like getting pressed up against a piece of glass while she's
having. It's as if their bed is made of
sex.
glass.
Yeah, but
that's right.
But then it shows the young guy that she gave the necklace to. It shows shows her husband's mistress in the house that she gave them.
That's right.
It goes through, like, to me, it just goes through and shows the positive impact she's had on these people's lives through this tragedy.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I honestly don't really remember, but I think
good insight.
That all seems to check out.
Anyway, yeah, but I do like the ending shot, and interesting that they're all on the same boat at the end, all the characters from the films. What's the meaning behind that? Is there any meaning behind that, Kona, or is that just a fun little callback to being like all these characters?
I've got another essay on that. Like that's kind of the big point. I feel like we should leave that though, or should we talk about that now? I don't know. Look, we can, but it'll be me rambling on for a while.
I don't know. I enjoyed this film, and like you said about the main character, I think that may be why I was like, I don't know, enjoy this one more. I felt like I got more connected with the main character and was more interested in what was going on with her as opposed to the first one or anything like that. She's an interesting character to observe, sort of thing, and her just going about this world and everything like that, and her interactions. But yeah, I don't know. I enjoy her interactions with the judge. I forget his name, but It's
Le Judge.
Le Judge.
Le
Le
Juge.
Judge.
Les Juges. I think this one. I think like this film does a good job being. Like, it's the third one, so you have to see it after you see the other two. But it kind of by tying it all together, it's also like the most relatable in terms of it's not like having losing your entire family in a car crash is not something that a lot of people go through. Being like getting divorced and then having to go to your own country and create a giant empire and then faking your own death, that's all far-fetched as well. Whereas this one is pretty simple. It's like she is a working class girl. She has some relationships that aren't great, some that are good, and she meets somebody and doesn't expect to, but that ends up becoming like an important thing. Like, I think everyone's kind of got at least one person in their lives like, just a random encounter that ends up having more of an impact than you think. And it just ties thematically everything. So I think by viewing this after you've viewed the first two, it feels like a really nice cap off of like it's not too dark, it's not too light. It's like, no, this is the simpler, like the condensed thesis of it. This is the human connection. And so at first, like her and Joseph are really prickly. They're obviously really crappy, and there's so many weird choices with them, right? Like he just turns around and he's like, yeah, I told everybody I was spying on them. Now they're suing me. I'm like, what? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But you then realize it's this desperate kind of lost cry that opens up this whole new world. And it's like an impulsive thing that you don't think about, but I guess it's, he's trying to connect to her and he doesn't know how to do it. And she feels sympathy and that opens it. And it just becomes this really interesting kind of beautiful relationship of like, here are two people who don't have any reason to connect, but because of that, or because they have no sort of reason to actually want the other one to like them or connect with them, they can be their freest and their most open with them. And that's because, like, I don't know, there are moments towards the end where I was really like, this is like really beautiful. Just hearing their conversations and them talk. I'm like, this is complete honesty with there's no romantic baggage. There's no social baggage.
Friendship.
Yeah, it's true friendship of like,
Yeah.
My only relationship with this person is to be honest and open with them because I'm not going to gain anything or I'm not going to lose anything. It's just pure expression. Like that's really cool. And that's what all these films are about, I guess.
Yeah, the scene where they're talking after the fashion show. And it basically lays out his life mirroring the judge. Like, it's a really fun conversation to be a part of.
Yeah.
And there's also this like ominous feeling to it with the wind and knowing that she's about to get on a boat and
that his former lover died, traveling across the thing, and it's sort of this thing where you feel like, oh no, everything's repeating. It's this like cycle, and then obviously that report comes through, and he's just watching it like a hawk to see. If she survived, and it's like,
all right. Screw it. Let's talk about the last scene. Let's see. We'll do it. So, all right. So the biggest question is it a sad ending or is it a happy ending, right? Because on one hand, like they say on there, over 1,000 people have died. This terrible ferry accident, but the 7 people that we know and we want to see
but
live,
not the main characters. Yeah.
No, but it is the main characters.
No, but I'm saying
only
they
the main
didn't
characters
die.
survive.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, exactly. So like. It's kind of this great thing. It's like, oh, fuck, I'm so relieved. Everyone I've connected with randomly is okay.
The other 1,000 people.
But over 1,000 people are dead. It's like, who cares? And so it's like, is this, in one hand, you're relieved, but on the other hand, you're not. And so it's like, on one hand, you've learned that all these relationships are supposed to be valuable. Every relationship and chance encounter is valuable or invaluable as much as the other. And, so it's like, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel. Am I supposed to just be like struck down? Am I supposed to be super relieved? I don't know. I'm like, that's just a really potent statement of like, it's really beautiful to see it come through. But I'm also like, who knows what stories I could have learned with the other 1,000 people? Who knows what connections we could have formed?
Yeah.
Is that what it's just saying? Like each of these people had these stories that we watch these films about.
Well, I don't know. What did you take from it?
There's even that smaller moment where the young judge and her are together, and it's like, is this the connection they make now, and is this the kickoff of a love story that
they're like next to each other.
We kind of missed here. Like, there's also that element of what happens next with her. Yeah, it's a really interesting way to end a movie, and again, it speaks to that. Now we get to sit around with our little coffees and talk about it because it's ambiguous, and like I don't think there's any right way to feel about it, right? Like it's.
So
it's up for us to interpret and share and talk about, and
Is this set after White in chronological? As in, is Julie Delpy out of prison now and they're back together, or is this
question?
before?
Or is this just while they were dating? Who knows?
Is like did
this make him impotent?
Does this?
I guess Blue is not with her husband. She's with
No, she's with the. So it's after that, definitely.
yeah. So I guess it implies that she's out of Julie Delpy is out of prison then, because we see the court her go to the
True,
court.
that's towards yeah. There we go. It wouldn't fit timeline wise.
But
So
at the same time, let me drop a bomb on you though.
Okay.
Is this even those versions of the people? Is that actually them? Is it a different version of Juliet
Multiverse?
Who like is there a version? Is this her life? Is there a different version of her life where she never married, or she's just on the ferry for some reason? Is there a version where Carol, and Julie Delpy never had issues and they just got married straight away? Like, is this again? It plays with that where it never actually gives you input because you're not sure if these are the same film. You're not sure if they're the same characters. You see connections, but for all we know, these are three different versions of them. For all we know that,
but don't they say in the news report their names, and they also say that wasn't she like married to the famous composer? Like they say that about Blue
composer, and yeah, yeah.
I think, yeah.
It's in the same universe, kind of. Don't get weird with it.
No,
it gets you some closure.
So Carol and Julie Delpy are the exact same age. She's gotten out of prison fine. No, like.
Well, maybe she never went to prison, right? Like maybe she's just in a holding cell and released a week later. Who knows? It probably asks more questions than it answers, which is fun. Like my wife hates when movies and TV shows end ambiguously. She gets frustrated, but I'm like, no, this is good. Like we can talk about it now. We can decide what happens next.
What did she think of the ending of Inception?
That's exactly the movie she was annoyed about. She's
no.
like, why did he end the movie like this? What actually happens? I'm like, it's up to us to decide.
Because I think at the end, well, you go.
Yeah, like I don't know, I enjoyed that little like the scene of all of them at the end. I interpret it as like a happy thing, I guess. Like he seems happy that she's alive and that like his story didn't repeat. Like this love, if even though it's not sexual or anything like that, this love didn't die traveling like that. It seemed like this thing that was going to cycle repeat. He was a combo breaker. He did something to change the cycle, and she didn't die. She survived. The other 1,000 died, but she survived. So
yeah, I think it's supposed to be. I think it's supposed to be happy, and we're supposed to feel bad about the fact that we're happy about it, right? Like we're supposed to feel bad that these 1,000 people died, and we don't really care because we never made a connection with them. We don't know any of them, but we know these 7 people, so they're the ones we care about. There's that kind of corny saying where it's like, 1,000 people die and it's a statistic, but one person dies and it's a tragedy, and that Conan, you're on mute. That kind of is how I feel here too. Like
my bad.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, I feel happy that these people survived, but I feel like I'm supposed to feel bad about that.
Like, I don't think you're supposed to though.
Well, I guess that's where I come out of it then. I guess.
When you think about it,
I think he's very, very much in all these films. He's avoiding morality statements, right? He tries really hard to never say this is right or wrong, and I think he does a good job. He's never like this is the right way to grieve or the wrong way. He's never like this is the right way to get back to your maniacal wife who's kicked you out of the country.
Yeah, he's like there's very little morality shown with like the mobster activities, right? Like you never see the dark side of that. It's just like, oh yeah, they're moving money around or something.
And it's just fun. It's like, it's pretty easy and fun, and they get bashed up, but he's just like, it's cool. We're all good. Yeah. So I think there's intentionally not meant to be any sense of like you should feel one way or the other. It's how you feel about it. It's like these relationships could be important. Luke, maybe you hated these relationships because you're like, I wasted 4.5 hours. He's like, I wish they'd all died on that ferry. Like, it's a really interesting way to end it of like, what do you make of these connections? How do you interpret what's just happened? Like, do you think you've grown it all from it and so it matters? Do you like all of that is really open? It's a really nice sort of contrast, I guess, of the tragedy, but also like the general tragedy and chaos of life, but the moments of beauty. It's like whether you see them for that or whether you see them as only the negatives and you look at the fact that it's a ferry disaster, or you look at the 7 survivors and you're like, it's a miracle. Because really, like, there's no reason objectively you should even care about the 1,000 anonymous people who die, right? They don't affect your. You could make this argument of, but as a human being, there's a moral, humanistic problem there. But at the same time, it really has no impact on your life. Every day, everywhere, people are dying, so there's no reason to care necessarily.
His dog died, August. His dog wasn't there at the end. off the shipwreck.
That's true.
He got on with the dog attached to him. He didn't
That's a
leave.
good
with
point.
the
Might have
dog
been better off
attached
tied to that lamppost.
to him. Yeah, exactly.
Oof.
Rude the day. What was I going to say? There was something I was going to say, but I've forgotten.
This
I love
film,
all
this is your favorite.
the small moments where they're being voyeuristic and listening in on the conversations. Like when she goes over to confront the man about his affair, and like the daughter's on the phone downstairs listening to her dad having an affair. Like she thinks it's this really simple thing, and she gets there, and it's so much more complicated than she realizes.
Yeah,
Like such a good small little moment. Listening to the judge talk to the girl about the weather and flirting with her, and then being like, oh, he's truly in love, but then not long after you find out she was cheating on him.
Yep.
So many good little moments.
Yeah, and it just plays into that idea of like, how much do you even know about the people you have relationships with?
Yeah.
Like what level of them are you projecting onto it? The importance, how your understanding is only from your side, right? Like you only really understand your own involvement in it. And even the people you think you're closest with, for all you know, they're doing something unbeholden, and like that's a really scary thing, and it kind of makes the relationships that feel real that much more important, right? It's just this film raises so many questions and does such a great job opening up questions about life that you think of and that are, like apply to all of life without giving any answers, and that's a really profound thing to be able to do. I feel like just every scene in this movie is like, shit, that's asking questions and making a statement with questions. Like it's loaded. It's loaded.
We do get another scene with the recycling lady, and the first time someone helps her. So morally, is this the only good person in the trilogy? She helps her.
I mean, should we even be recycling? Like maybe recycling is actually bad for the planet. We don't know.
Maybe that bottle caused the shipwreck.
Maybe butterfly effect, maybe.
No, I enjoyed that moment. Like it made Valentina more. I don't know. There's something really enchanting about her. Kind of like there's an innocence to her, and that to me just adds to that. And again, it's a similar scene to the other three, but it feels completely different again.
And it's made better because there's no dialogue. She just does it, and like the old person just kind of looks at her.
Yep.
And it's like
I'm
that.
Like, thank you. I've been trying to do this for 2 years.
Exactly. It's like that, and that's going to become a moment that old person probably remembers. Of like, someone helped me today.
It's kind of closure on that whole thing as well. That it's someone finally helped to put it in. It's like, yes, there's goodness in the world.
All right. Can someone explain to me? There's a moment where the judge is offering Valentine a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and he comes out with the kettle and he accidentally spills some of the water on the floor. And then they keep talking, and then he on purpose pours water on the floor. I rewatched this scene like 3 times, and I cannot understand what the hell was the point of this moment. And maybe, again, it's just one of those small, weird moments. But
I didn't even notice.
I Googled this. I could not find a reason. I'll have to try and find the scene and
He wanted her to clean it up.
Maybe.
Yeah. He's like, you need to bend over and clean that?
The glass gets broken, and he's just like, the broom's over there. And he gets her to clean up the glass. Maybe he's just like, clean up the water.
I can't believe you guys didn't see the kettle getting poured on the floor. Man.
I fell asleep during this movie.
I don't know how Carol got rich, so I missed a few things from this.
Yeah, you missed a big part of that.
I mean, Carol. Nobody knows how Carol got rich, right? That's kind of the point.
True. He fooled me.
He bought some land that was going to get bought by IKEA because he overheard some other mobsters. How did he buy the land? Because other mobsters talked about it, and he swooped in underneath them, went and offered more money than the land was worth to the house owners, got in there cheaper than what IKEA is going to buy it for because they're going to buy it for an absolute fortune.
Yes, made an airtight will so that they couldn't just kill him and take it.
Yes, and if they killed him, the money the houses would go to the church where they would sit forever.
Where did he get the money to buy the land?
He had saved up money from his mob activities.
Yeah, he'd been doing mobster stuff. Like, he makes good money doing mob things.
The impression is that it wasn't like a lot of money, though. Like, this was kind of worthless land before this. And it was just old, single old men living in there, basically.
And, like, he says to his brothers, I've got enough money to pay you back. So he's been just saving all of his money up. So, true. And, like, real estate in 1994 Poland is not going for a whole lot, okay?
$4.
$4 a hectare. There's a lot of stuff that the judge does that is just weird. Like again, like the same where he turns himself in. It's like, why would you do that?
Mm.
And I really feel like he's kind of like this agent of chaos in like a non-Joker-esque way, where he's just like, what happens if I do this?
There's the drug lord that he's kind of spying on, and he's like, here's the phone number, and she rings him up, and he says, I don't know, I can't remember what she says, but she's like, you're a dick.
You
hangs
deserve
up.
to die.
Yeah, that's what it is. And then he's like, here's the number if you want to call him again. Like, super
Say
weird.
mean things. He's just like,
Yeah.
He's main character. He's doing side quests after the main game's finished. He's just like, yeah, whatever.
It
Let's go mess with this drug dealer.
It really feels like that. He's just watching what happens. Like he's so detached from his own being. Hence why his dog dies. I don't care. I don't want it. And he's just like, what happens if I do this? I don't care. Like, I don't want anything. Because she even says like, you should stop breathing. And he's just kind of like, yeah.
I want nothing. Then stop breathing. Good idea. Like it's such a weird little moment, but yeah.
But I think it's like he wants to just see what happens when this does. So he's like, okay, what happens if I pour water on the floor?
Mate, yeah, actually, that probably 100% fits. You're right.
He's so random.
He is so.
There's this great shot I kind of want to point out where she's listening to him talk about his voyeurism, and she's up against the wall, and there's a reflection in like a record or something on the wall. And like the expression on her face is she's kind of interested, and the expression on the face in the wall is like kind of disgusted. I don't know how he got this scene, because I'm sure it's not like edited. It's just when you look at it from the two different angles, she looks like she's got two expressions on her face. Yeah, and I don't know, it's such a great little shot, and it's like these are the two reactions she could have to this. Either of these would take us down completely different paths in this movie. It's just another, element of chaos.
Yeah, there's a lot of that symbolic sort of like reflections in colors and.
Yeah.
Like, what could come from this? The two realities is great. It's great.
So like I said at the start of this podcast, like my wife, I thought she would really love these sort of films because she loves Emily and all that. She really found them boring and wasn't engaged and tuned out massively for the first two and didn't know. The third one, similar though, where halfway through she sort of started paying attention and was like, oh, I should watch this film. Like she was like, this is interesting. Like what's happening here? And wanted to go back and watch it as well. But yeah, maybe, I don't know. It's like, but you have to pay attention, I feel like, with these films. If you tune out for a bit, it's just
you totally do. But do you think that she or you guys would have the same reaction to this if you didn't watch the first two? Like, I feel like this film, like as a trilogy, like it's compounded of it's the whole viewing, because it's built on like we've already seen
this movie could stand alone.
I honestly don't know if I would enjoy or appreciate it nearly as much. I don't think I would if I just watched this. I would be a lot more confused. I wouldn't really know what this guy's trying to say. And at the end, I would just be like, what's this about? It's just about a bunch of weird people doing weird stuff. But because I was like, I've seen, how we can handle grief, how we can handle these weird relationships, how people react in different ways. This takes on a whole new sort of poignancy. To me, that's what for me.
No, I think I agree, because like I think part of the reason I struggle with Blue so much is it's like just dunking you straight in the art house pool, but you get warmed up to it there, and then White is, it's kind of a bit less in that art house pool, but you're kind of getting immersed in it, and then you're learning his language kind of along the way too. So the third one, I do think they build on each other, and I think it definitely has more impact with the other two, and obviously the ending has a huge amount more impact because of knowing the characters.
I am I'm glad. I think they're the right length, an hour and a half.
Yeah,
very tight. Stay, they're welcome.
Every time I've turned one on, I'm like, please, please, please. Oh, thank God, it's only this. Because I was say, like, after Blue, I'm like, if that was 2.5 hours, I couldn't do it.
Yeah,
struggle.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was the Three Colors trilogy. Are we going to rank them, or are you?
We need to rank them. No, we need to rank them. I thought you were going to skip it.
No. I nearly forgot. Luke, you go first. Rank them for us.
Red, white, blue.
Okay.
Easy.
I think for me, it's white, red, blue. White is one of these movies I would watch again.
Yeah, okay.
I enjoyed it quite a bit. And Julie Delpy, I mean, she's lovely.
She's something else in that movie. It's definitely red. I really need to watch them both all again, because I feel like I would go red, white, and blue as well, because blue was too much of a shock to the system.
Yeah.
I want to rewatch it with what I know now and see how that would feel. Because otherwise, yeah, I was a bit too this film's very slow. I don't get it. Whereas by the end of it, I was really into it. So
is
Red
Red
is
a
definitely
popular
best.
choice? I didn't know that coming in that Red was like the one that's critically known as the best one. But so it's because it's the only one with 100, isn't it? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all the reviews and like analysis I read were like, this is similar. Like they're like, this is the culmination of it all. This is the most profound of them.
Yeah.
It's pretty unanimous.
True. But yeah, I enjoyed White too. Like White.
Yeah, White's a lot of fun.
Blue, I was definitely like halfway through the movie, I was like, oh, I'm dreading this trilogy. I was like, oh no.
It's a hard watch. There's no doubt about it.
But yeah, I don't know. Definitely subverted expectations though. None of these films were what I was expecting them to be.
Yeah, me neither.
Like it's hard to even say these films are like romance, like films, if you know what I mean. Like, I don't know.
No, you're right.
In a way, but not in the way I was expecting. Like they're a lot more dark or somber or just, yeah.
They're there to subvert your expectations.
Mm.
Well, thank you for joining us for The Good, the Bad, and the Worst. Next fortnight, we are doing Avatar, what is it called? The Way of the Water? The Way of Water.
To go back into blue, but not be depressed this time.
So we're going to watch the first two Avatar movies. We couldn't wait for the trilogy because that'll be in 2033 or something. It'll be a while away. So let's do the first two Avatar movies. Join us for that. If you enjoyed listening to us talk about movies, you'll love our other podcast, Bonus XP. It's about video games. It's very regular.
Yes. We'll be doing an episode soon on the Game Awards.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to arguing about that.
Yes.
If you listen to us on Spotify, please give us a good review. It helps us out heaps. But tell your friends, tell your family. This episode was brought to you by The Taste of Iron by one CV Clark. Check it out on Amazon. And we'll catch you next time.
Peace.
What's French for bye? Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Pourquoi?
Now in Polish? No?
Carol.
No.
Carol.